For 2 long and intensely frustrating weeks after bombs tore through Bali's nightclub strip, investigators had no idea who was responsible for killing 202 people, including 88 Australians. What happened next has remained a secret for 2 decades, but it involved the shard of an exploded Nokia phone, Australian spies and their secret supercomputer. 3 bombs had been detonated shortly after 11:08 p.m. on Saturday, October 12, 2002. The first exploded at Paddy's bar in Kuta, followed by a second massive blast at the Sari Club across the road. The detonation of a smaller bomb outside the U.S. consulate in Denpasar betrayed an anti-West motive. The crime scene was what you'd expect from a bomb blast, remembers Mick Keelty, who was Australian Federal Police Commissioner at the time of the Bali bombings. There were bits and pieces of human flesh blasted into walls. Most of the buildings had lost their roofs. There was an engine of a motor vehicle on the second floor of a building that was 3 blocks away from the blast. A bomb attack of that scale, it shocked every one of us, then head of the Indonesian National Police, POLRI, General Dai Bakhtia said. Even Indonesian President Megawati Soekarno-Putri came to Bali to witness the extent of the damage firsthand. On the Monday after the attack, the president held a cabinet meeting, where almost every minister criticized the Indonesian National Police for failing to prevent the bombing. The Indonesian general fronted ministers and prepared himself to be sacked. Megawati gave me my chance to speak, Bakhtia told the ABC. I said, police have 2 main tasks, to prevent a crime from happening, and secondly to investigate a criminal case until we find the perpetrators. As the chief of POLRI, I failed my first task, but there is a second one waiting for me. The pressure on Bakhtia was immense. He vowed to resign if he did not bring the bombers to justice. General Bakhtia phones a friend. The bomb site was still smoldering when then Commissioner Mick Keelty was woken by calls from Indonesia. Bakhtia asked me how soon I could get some people on the ground, said Keelty, who had already established a trusted relationship with the Indonesian general years before the Bali attack. By sheer coincidence, AFP specialists were already en route to Jakarta to run a training course on the night of the Bali bombings, after Bakhtia had confided to Keelty over a round of golf in Perth, months earlier, that Indonesia lacked expertise in forensic investigation. The specialists were quickly diverted to Denpasar, joining other AFP officers who were in Bali already. Operation Alliance began, led on the Australian side by Assistant Commissioner Graham Ashton, and on the Indonesian side by Maid Mangku Pastika, who Keelty also knew well, having trained with him in the 1980s. The answer will come from the skies. Even with some of the world's best forensic investigators on site, the Bali bombing was proving immensely difficult. The Sari Club blast was so big it had left a deep crater that had filled with water. And there was also a question of culture. In keeping with the Muslim faith, Indonesian authorities wanted to remove the bodies for burial within 24 hours. After a fortnight of frustration, the only solid leads that Pastika and Ashton had to offer were a white minivan that was used to carry the Sari Club bomb, its chassis and engine numbers filed off, and the probable ingredients of the explosives used. Pressure was mounting on investigators. And after meeting with Indonesian spy chiefs in Jakarta alongside ASIS Director General Alan Taylor and ASIO boss Dennis Richardson, Keelty believed Pastika's team was being poorly advised by Indonesian intelligence. Their briefings did not match what we were getting from the crime scene, their briefings were way off, Keelty said. It was clear this investigation required some special detective powers. Pastika knew this already. He'd looked in the skies and said, the answer will come from the skies, Keelty said. I knew that he was a practicing Hindu. He prayed every day. And I said, you mean from God? And he said, no, from satellites. Clues hidden in a seismogram and a Nokia. Luck changed for investigators when forensic crime scene examiner Sarah Benson found the tiny fragment of a Nokia 5110 mobile phone outside the U.S. consulate. This was the smallest of the 3 bomb blast sites, and the most forensically clean. Luckier still, that fragment contained the Nokia's 15-digit serial number, or IMEI number. The IMEI number is unique to each mobile phone, Keelty said. You can change SIM cards on phones but the IMEI number remains the same. Nokia 5110 phones had been used by terrorists elsewhere in the world because they were known to produce sufficient electric charge when they rang or received a text message to set off explosions. Knowing who owned the Nokia phone, or who rang it to detonate the bomb outside the U.S. consulate, were potential leads. But these leads required the phone data held by Indonesia's government-owned mobile provider Telkomsel. And another important clue had emerged. The Sari Club explosion was so enormous it had been picked up by seismic sensors, pinpointing the exact moment of its detonation, 11 hours 8 minutes and 31 seconds p.m. Bali time. The AFP believed the Sari Club explosion, like the one outside the U.S. consulate, had been detonated remotely. The organizers made sure that these suicide bombers didn't back out at the last minute. So the bombs were being detonated by mobile phones, Keelty said. We knew that if we overlaid the data from the seismic blast with the data from telephone records, that we would be able to pretty much precisely identify what the number was that was dialed that detonated the other bombs. With the full understanding of Pastika's team, AFP and Telstra technicians went to the Jakarta headquarters of Telkomsel to request access to the company's mobile phone data. When we went with the Indonesian National Police and our Telstra colleagues to Telkomsel, we basically were explaining to the Indonesian National Police at the same time how we were using analysis of analog phones and cellular phones in Australia, and the success we were having in criminal investigations. Access was granted. The crime scene was one thing, but in terms of the telephone network and the data that Telkomsel had, that was pretty much untouched. It was pristine. This was what I would call a goldmine, Keelty said. But it was a goldmine too rich for the Indonesian or Australian police to mine.